Okay, so about Isaiah 49. Now, I can understand that, from your reading of that chapter, you basically got the following.
Thy nursing mothers. So their queens is going to be our nannies. They shall bow down to thee with their face toward the earth. I mean, they're going to serve us and lick up the dust of thy feet. So the Gentiles are going to be licking up our damn sandals / boots. Okay, the dust of them. This is in the Bible.
Now, that's what you do. I understand that you take one scripture, and then from there, you try to validate through that one scripture some type of toe-licking servant thing with the Gentiles who come into salvation, and that is their destiny for coming into salvation of God. That's going to be their destiny for heaven. Now, that's what you got out of that scripture. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to take one verse from Isaiah and to see if that was what he was talking about. I'm actually going to read, I'm not even going to read the whole chapter. All I'm going to do is, I'm just going to read a few verses up. Because if anybody does what I'm about to do, then they'll actually see exactly what Isaiah was saying, point blank and clear. And once they see that, then they're really going to start scratching their heads at you, wondering, how in the world did you get an interpretation like that? So let me just go ahead and read, because, if it's one thing I do, I learn, and I learn from everybody. And I want to thank you, because you taught me how to use this sword a lot more sharply. So I'm going to challenge you again, because once again, I want to know the truth. I want to know either if I'm right and you're wrong, or if I want to know if you're right and I got some rethinking to do. So I'm just going to read this. Now, you start at verse 22. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at verse 19. For thy wastes and thy desolate places, and the land of thy destruction, shall even now be too narrow by reason of the inhabitants. Oh, okay. The inhabitants of who is going to be too narrow? I mean, what's going to be too much for who? Let's find out. And they that swallowed thee up shall be far away. The children which thou shalt have, after thou lost the other, shall say again in thine ears, this place is too strait for me. Give place that I may dwell. Wow. So she's going to have so much children that, she's going to need a bigger place. That's what I'm reading. Now let me continue to read. Then thou shalt say in thine heart, who hath begotten these? Seeing I have lost my children, I am desolate. Okay, that's symbolic. I am captive. Once again, that's symbolic. And moving and removing to and fro. And once again, that's symbolic. And who hath brought up these? These who? The children. Behold, I was left alone. These, where had they been? Now, if anyone reads this, then obviously, Isaiah is writing about how Israel had lost her children due to desolation, maybe some wars and famine, just like when we have children, we end up losing them to things. And obviously, you can ask any Israelite back then, how in the world did they have their population depleted, or how did they lose so much children? It was through desolation. It was through war. So let's see what God has to say about it. This is when I read your verse. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up mine hand to the Gentiles, and shall set up my standard to the people, and they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried by. So now you get to see that, when you read the chapter, you're seeing that, Isaiah is writing under the Spirit of God to the people that I know that you lost a lot. I know that, you know, your sons and daughters are gone because of all these things that happened to them. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to raise up the other nations, and they're going to bear you children. I will give you children back. I will spread your seed even more. I could even read the first verse in the chapter. You know what it says? It says this: "Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from afar. The Lord hath called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name." So obviously, Isaiah is talking about Israel. Everybody knows that in the Old Testament, New Testament, ancient times, that, you know, women were always compared to lands or places. You know, I mean, they're walking planets. I mean, this is why, you know, we can all, I mean, you know this. I know you do. I mean, you and I both know this. You know, you look in the book of Revelation. You know, it talks about the woman, the harlot who sits on the beast, you know, and we all know that the harlot is Rome and all the, I mean, a land flowing with milk and honey. You know, it just is very obvious that Isaiah is writing, you know, writing off Israel to be compared as a woman who has lost her children to war, and that God is going to bring children to Israel. You know, and not only that, maybe even begat more children. You know, because you read in the verse, it says, well, you know, what does it say? Yeah, the children which thou shalt have after thou hast lost the other. It's obvious. So I'm waiting for a response to see, you know, now how did, you know, now I just read the entire chapter. Well, not the entire chapter, but I just read some good portions of it, you know, and that's what I got. So if that's what Isaiah was talking about, you know, in terms of Israel, because that's, you know, the times around that he lived and he was writing about, you know, in relation to, you know, the actual times. If Isaiah is talking about that, then that means that the whole salvation thing that you had, you know, with, you know, Israel, whatever, you know, is called into question.
That's really talking about the Jewish people who's calling themselves Jews. The ones who's calling themselves Christians that are heathens, all of them going to be our possession, man. Because we really check it out. Those are going to be the only ones left. Because the Gentiles and the other nations that have a heart to serve the Most High, the Lord, when you get the understanding, they're going to be saved to be our slaves and our servants in the kingdom of heaven. Okay?
I don't get it. So, please, I want a response. Either I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and maybe I'm just looking at this wrong. I didn't do any extra, you know, comparisons to how, you know, those slave masters ended up treating us. So now, you know, God, you know, said in the Old Testament that, you know, the same thing is going to happen for us, and that they're going to be our nannies. And no, that's not what he was talking about. It's obvious. So when you read the whole chapter, you get the whole story. When you read the tidbit, it could sound like pretty much anything, including your story.
The bulk of the Gentiles are going to be burnt up and destroyed. The remnant of them that call themselves by the name of the Lord and try to do the will of the Lord said we want to possess them. You understand? We want to possess them. I mean, they're going to be our servants. And they're going to be our slaves because we're the chosen. The Israelites are the chosen. I'm sorry. They're the chosen. I'm sorry. So I know you want the slave masters and the Gentiles to be up there with you in hierarchy, but it's not going to happen. They have to be your servants. They have to be your slaves because we're the nation of people, and the Lord said he set Israel above all nations on this earth.
So I would just want a response on that. Yeah, so let me move on here.